All right, Peter, Misty, welcome to Beyond the Rut. How are you folks doing?
Hey, Jerry. So glad to be here.
Yep.
Nice. All right. Well, you guys are calling in from the great state of Texas, as am I. You guys are down there in Houston. I'm up here in Dallas. And I always like it when we have Texans because, if this thing like deviates and we talk about barbecue for an hour,
I can help you with that.
Don't get him started. Please don't get him started.
we
we may be here all day.
Absolutely.
Hey, like I said before we record, we never know where we're going with this. So that would be a first, actually, if we wind up talking about barbecue the whole time. That would, don't worry, guys. That's not where we're on here.
Talk about it. The religious significance of barbecue and the family table. There you go. We can talk about it.
Passover.
Sure.
I'm down with that. Some roasted lamb. Don't take my firstborn. All that good stuff.
Exactly, right? Right sauce makes all the difference. So there you go.
This is right up there when somebody tried to convince me that Die Hard was a Christmas movie.
It is a Christmas movie.
There we go. I mean, I was convinced once I heard the arguments. I mean, yeah, there was a Christmas tree.
There was. It was Christmas Eve, I think.
Yeah, there was a Santa hat.
Yep.
Come on.
Somebody said ho, ho, ho.
Yep.
Oh, man, we digressed very quickly, guys. I'm
right off the bat, we didn't even get into anything. It's going to be I like it.
Now, the reason why I wanted to have you both on the show, we met through actually your ventures, Spark Media Ventures. Rob Kirkpatrick and I were interacting a few months back, and he asked me, Jerry, you going to Spark Conference? And I'm like, huh? I think I said that in the messenger private message we had going back and forth. Huh? And he said, yeah, it's Spark Podcast. It's a Christian podcast conference, and it's going to be in Dallas. And I was like, well, take my money. Where do I go sign up? So that's how I learned about the two of you. And then I got to meet you in person in June of 2021. And you guys have been great. You ran a great event. Got to see the power of networking amongst the collective, the Spark Collective. And I thought, okay, that's what people need, a community of like-minded folks on a similar mission, lifting each other up. That's the rut that you're helping people get out of that I perceived. And I just needed to get you on the show. And of course, I'm there with my microphone trying to be like Billy on the street. And I mean, if you folks don't know, running a conference, it takes a lot of work. So if you think you can just like plop down, do an interview, and then plop out to just anybody who walks up with a microphone like me, no. So I'm glad we were able to schedule some time, get you on here. And that was just a long bout way to say thank you so much, Peter and Misty, for jumping on here and doing this call with me.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Glad to be here.
Now, tell us a little bit about yourselves, because I saw just recently on Facebook, we're Facebook friends, the two of you, well, I think Misty ratted you out, but she showed an older video picture of your wedding day, I think. And I was like, man, that or I was like stalking y'all guys and I went too far back. But I saw an old picture of your wedding day and I was like, wow, they were kids. So tell us a little bit, how did you two meet? And, what was it that moment when you decided that's the person I'm going to marry?
You want me to take this one? Or
Yeah, I'll let you go with this one.
Okay.
Yeah.
The real story?
Oh, yeah, the real story.
Not there's two stories. Now, so actually, we met. She was very young. She was 21.
Yeah.
When we met. She was 21. I think I was 24. Something like that. We met at a pool hall. Actually, I was at the time. That's what I did for a living, was play pool. And I saw her walking across the pool room, and I thought, wow. So I had the courage to go up and talk to her, and she was on a date with a friend, and they another girl, and they were like a double date or whatever, and they ditched those people, and we took them to breakfast.
In the rest is history.
And she didn't like me; she liked my brother, and so I just wore her down. It's one of those just constantly being there and just wore her down. And I think we were together for 3 or 4 weeks, and it was very vivid. We came to a stoplight, and I just looked at her and I said, we're going to be together for the rest of our lives. And she just looked at me like, yeah, what? Like, whatever. I just met you, man. I don't even know if you're a stalker or what, because I was still wearing her down. And that was 29 years ago. 29 years ago.
Wow. Now, Misty, do you have it in your diary? Like, hey, Peter told me a really funny joke today from that moment.
Probably, yeah. I read it, but I'm sure there was somewhere like, whatever, this is not happening. And,
All my friends were like, "Oh, he's so cute. He's so handsome." And I'm like, "Are you sure? Because I don't
I
know."
don't think this is the guy.
But God knew, and that's the really cool part of the story is that God knew just that we perfectly complement each other. We're best friends. And he's very gifted in some areas and I'm gifted in other areas. And those are really, really complementary. So I love that, even though the way we started out, we had no idea that we would ever do something together. Right. But through lots of years of difficulty and pain and hardship and grief and loss and just the things that fortify you and make you more like Christ. And then we love being together. So
yeah, I don't think we realized that when we were together that God's like, okay, we're going to give you 20 something years of sanctification with each other. And so the purification of our metal through fire has taken a while, but we are happier, better as a couple and more solid than we've ever been in our entire past, right? Because the youth is very different, besides being just stupid when you're young, and just kind of winging it and just, I was such an idiot when I was in my 20s. Like I'd look back and just like, God. And
me too.
to now where it's like, there's so much, I say this all the time. I wish I had the confidence and comfort that I have now in myself back when I was 25, right? Mm-hmm. To know those things and to not care about what doesn't really matter, the rest of the world and other people and things that think about, and just be able to relish the relationship I have now, like to have that feeling, that depth of love, that understanding, that bond, which is so different. It was, when it's young, it's filled with passion and excitement, and it's all this, yeah, it's like fireworks, right? And now it's more like watching fireworks, so I don't have to do all the work, I don't have to pop it, and now I can just take, then I can go home more comfortably, right? So it's still an amazing, spectacular show, but the stupid stuff I did to try to not blow my hand off, like that's not there anymore. Now it's much more comfortable, right? And so I'll take this over that any day. Not that it was not fun then, but the way God has bonded our hearts and knitted us together is just spectacular. I can't get over what he's done in our life together. So it's pretty amazing.
Nice. Now, were you both Christians when you met each other, or was that something that developed later on?
Yeah, I grew up Catholic, so I'm an Italian family, right? And I was the firstborn son, so I was supposed to be a priest, right? That was destined to. That was like,
or inherit the family wealth, right?
But there, either would, right? Take over the family business, kind of a Corleone thing there. But no, I'm kidding.
I almost drowned on my coffee there.
I know. I'm sorry about that. But that was altar boy and that kind of growing up. So Catholic's very different than the more Protestant style belief system that we're in now, which is we're Baptist. And that, I think you grew up.
I grew up Catholic also, but in college I had a conversion experience and fell in love with the Lord. Didn't walk with him, like was still kind of had one foot in the world. And it took us a couple of years to find our way. Because Peter was very, like, he loved the Catholic Church, the comfort of the church, and just like the stained glass and
the ritual, the pews, incense,
the wood, like
stuff.
Yeah. And I was like, but the Bible and Jesus. And so we ended up finding a church to go to, and we got baptized together, and it was just really sweet and really kind of grew up in our faith together.
Good. Yeah, I always like asking that one when I get an opportunity to ask that one, because, Liv and I were not attending church regularly at the time we met. She had a much closer upbringing in the Catholic Church, whereas I was in and out of a variety of different ones, but was claiming to be agnostic and atheist by the time we met. And anyway, you wouldn't know it by knowing me now, but yeah, that came later. It came later for us.
Yeah.
Now, so that was like the early years. You added some kids to the family. I met a couple of them already. Now there are 3 altogether?
Yes, we've had Yeah, we've lost several as well. So in between those three, we had a miscarriage. We had a tubal pregnancy that nearly killed me, and then our we had a son who was born with trisomy 18. He was stillborn. So we have those kids on top of our 3 kids. So we got angel babies in heaven as well.
And that's hard. I've got some friends who've lost kids, both as babies and later on. And what was something that you were both able to lean on to keep from falling apart? Because that is something that tends to tear couples apart, is losing a child. And here you've got 3.
Yeah.
Our middle son, Connor, he's special, right? He's a special needs kid. And that families and couples with special needs kids have like a 70% divorce.
Oh, more like in the 90.
Publicly it's claimed as 76 or 74% or whatever, but it's staggeringly high, the amount of, because the stress and strain that goes with it, and depends on the severity of the condition and a lot of what goes along with that, right? Because there's a huge financial burden. Anything special needs is 10 times, it's just 10x whatever it normally be, even if it's the same product. Like we used to find things for Connor, like these therapy pedals that you would Velcro to his feet and Velcro to a bike to try to teach him how to ride a bike. They were like $150. It was a piece of plywood, some Velcro, and a screw like that. I just made our own stuff. I'd make our own things. Right? It's stupid. So that financial burden and stress that goes along with that, plus some of the challenges that occur with a special child, where there's no downtime, there's no, depending on what their condition is. So us having that, and then we found out that Liam had trisomy 18. There was a lot of grief for him, but we knew he was going to be our son no matter what. Like, so we were just, that's what it was going to be, right? That's what God gave us, and that's what we're going to do. So I think Connor was some very much help in getting us prepared for what was going to be very challenging, because trisomy 18 boys never live very long, rarely. Girls can live to the teenage years and some older, but the boys typically don't make it to the teenage years at all. So we were mentally understood what was going on and that challenge. And when that happened, it was devastating and trying, but I think having our faith and knowing that God just said, you know what, I'm just going to take him and he's not going to suffer. That was, for us, more empowering than because you used to say all the time, I can't believe going through this and not having faith in the Lord, like not having that. Well, that just such an emptiness and such a void that you would have to embrace to say, well, there's nothing now. And you talked many times about how terrible that would be. And that's what really shored us up and supported us.
Yeah. And just, I would just say our faith in general. I was reading a book at the time that I was pregnant with Liam called 1,000 Gifts by Ann Voskamp. And it's about being grateful and thankful. And I began just thanking God for everything. And I think that heart of gratitude and that closeness, God really had us in a comfort bubble, that peace that passes understanding. So much so that we were able to minister to other people at the funeral of our son. And we shared the gospel, and I had lost my brother growing up. And so my mom had lost a son, and then I had lost a son. And the way we handled those things were very different, because we could say, blessed be the name of the Lord. And she didn't get it. But I think ultimately that and sharing the gospel at Liam's funeral helped bring my mom to Christ. And so, there are so many layers to it. Not only were we ministering to people in the midst of our pain, they would try to call us and reach out to us, but God was holding us so close and so tight through it all. But I definitely agree with Peter that having Connor prepared us for what possibly could be. And when the doctor said, we want you to abort, we said, he's fearfully and wonderfully made, and God has a purpose and a plan for his life, no matter how long he lives. And yeah.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that. I knew when I went to Spark Conference, you had mentioned to the audience that they all knew your story. And I'm like, I don't know that story. And I didn't know what I was getting into till just now. And, so thank you for sharing that with all of us. Because there are a lot of people out there who try to struggle through this alone, and they try to bottle it up, and, to be open about it. And, even if it's reopening those wounds a little bit, it is reaching somebody we will probably never ever meet until, we're in heaven one day. And that always blows my mind. I mean, just telling me about the person who was saved from all this, I got choked up because, it's almost always connected in some way. And we don't know. We just don't know until we get to that point and we get a little glimpse of how God's using our pain and our tragedies for the better.
Yep. Very true,
man. And, it's clear that not only did, God keep you together while you're going through this turmoil, but because of that, you also were able to heal, and you're healing from all that. Now, there's probably no great way to segue into what you do now with the Spark Collective, Spark Media, and all that. But how do we bridge from that story, from that testimony, into what you're doing now together as the dynamic, what I refer to you as the dynamic duo? I'm trying to get it to stick. We'll see.
I like that. I like the dynamic duo. Let me take this one. So it's just another little part of this story of ours is Peter worked from home a lot, and I homeschooled our boys. So our family was always together. I mean, we homeschooled for 20 years. So our kids were home. We were all together. So there's that tight-knit part of our relationship. And as our oldest son went to college, and I said, I think I'm supposed to write a Bible study. And I said, I could write about this or I could write about that. And one of the things was about overcoming. And he said, baby, that's your life story. He said, that's what you need to write. And so I wrote a Bible study called The Struggle is Real, but So is God. Because you're right, Jerry, everybody has struggles, big struggles, small struggles. People may not have experienced the same struggles that we have. They may have experienced far worse. There are people all over the world who are struggling, or maybe not even as bad, but whatever the struggle is, it's bad for you, right? And but God is bigger than all of our struggles, and so that is kind of a foray into this. We first started speaking at Texas Right to Life. Then it led to the Bible study. And then for years they were saying, you need a podcast, baby, you need to podcast. They bought my mic, they bought the equipment, and I moved it around the house. Cause I was like, I did. You were like, I thought you were starting that podcast. Yeah, I'm going to do that someday.
Yeah, that was fun.
But 6 months before the Bible study launched, I started the podcast By His Grace, and we never looked back after that. It was, it's just been a fun journey. I started to see how I was reaching people from the comfort of my own home around the world with encouraging messages of hope and to share the gospel. I mean, how amazing is that I can be in Houston, Texas, and I can be talking to people in India or Africa or South America or literally all over the world. And that was I just saw how cool that was. And from there, that led to Spark. And it's been quite a journey.
Yeah, the backstory about us working together all the time. We've been together as a family forever, right? It was, I did consulting and I was home a lot. My kids thought I was unemployed for a long time. And so, which was great. I loved being able to be around my family all the time. And homeschooling afforded us a lot of the, everybody takes summer vacations. We took ours at the end or before, and there was no crowds, no people. And so my kids didn't experience the madness of like everybody else in the world taking a vacation. So it was really, really fun, which set us up for doing this thing. It was a logical evolution of, she's like, I got to do something else or I'm gonna drive my kids insane. Like I'm gonna be all in their lives. So, and the calling was, the calling was obvious as could be, because right when we hit on let's write this Bible study about overcoming, we go to church on Sunday and the sermon is about overcoming. And we're like, what? And then they had a guest who came, who sings a song about it, who was like a famous Christian singer that Misty loved. she sings the song, and I'm looking at her like, really? Like, how much more does he need to tell you? It's time to write this Bible study. Like, this is stupid. Like, we got to write this. So, and that was a family thing, right? So she would do the writing, and then we'd mirror the computer to the TV, and we'd all sit on the couch and edit every single line of the entire Bible study together. Went through this multiple revisions, like
3 years worth of
multiple years, then sending it to a paid editor, and then coming back and kind of doing that. And that started okay, let's do this together. And then our talents are uniquely balanced in that I'm on the technical side, the background, I do all the graphics and all that stuff. But she's just got the heart and the head, and brings that to the front. And then together, it's a perfect marriage of us saying, literally a perfect marriage of us saying, together we're much more dynamic and powerful than her just trying to do it alone, or me just coming out being this technical nerd about it. Like, kind of bringing it together. She smooths out my edges, and I put the spotlight on her like she should have. So it works out really well.
Nice. And then you brought one of your sons into the fold as well, because I met him at Spark and then met him again over at Podcast Movement. How did he get into this? I mean, he's already in proximity, of course, but he kind of had this aha moment, like, hey, I can help people as well.
Yeah, he graduated in 2020. I mean, come on. The world is crazy in May of 2020, and everybody is trying to figure out, what's happening in the world. And he came to us and he said, I don't want to go to college. And we're like, well, we don't really blame you. And we saw our friends whose kids were going to college that fall really struggling because they were having to quarantine, and they were at school, they were not at school. It was a mess. It was a messy year. But we said, you're going to have to be productive. And it was my recommendation. I said, son, why don't you start a podcast editing business? Because my boys had grown up with music lessons, and we gave them video cameras when they were little and let them like make movies, and they manipulated sound files and made music and did all these different things. And I was like, you know how to do this. And I said, and I have all these women who come to me that don't want to have to do that. And the rest was literally history. He started with one client that led to another one. He got a publishing house that he does their recordings. And now he's got like 15 clients, I think. And he is just rocking it.
Yeah. And that's a really, brilliant move on his part to say, yes, like, I trust you, Mom. Great idea. Let me do this. Because there are a lot of people out there, they want to start a podcast, they want to get their voice out there, but they're intimidated by, or they don't have time for the technical pieces. And then enter somebody who has the technical pieces and is like, hey, I can help you with that. For this fee or this structure, this is what I can do, and this is how I can help you. And that provides a solution for folks. So it's, if you're out there thinking, no, that's not for me. Or maybe I want a podcast, but I don't want to handle all the technical stuff. There's somebody out there. In fact, I'm talking to his mom right now. So, and his dad.
Well, here's the really cool thing about it too, as parents, he works with all these Christian podcast that he is hearing every day. He is hearing so many amazing messages of, God's redemption and his grace and his love and the word and the Bible and all of these things. So it's kind of a twofold thing, because he's being fed spiritually, whether he realizes it or not. So that's really cool too.
It's getting bread on the table and bread in the soul, right?
That's right.
What is it? Shay Watson is always talking about the pantry podcast. What are you putting in your pantry?
That's right. Spiritual nourishment.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So quick random shout out to the Watsons there, huh?
They're really good people.
Yeah. Which I also met them through y'all as well. I mean, they had done a spinoff, and then y'all are connected, and then I'm like, oh man, these guys are awesome. And then had them on the show. So
good.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Good people. So, I mean, just like you said. Now, so you had your podcast that you launched, you were getting traction with that. And then, you decided to start Spark Media. And tell us about that. 'Cause I mean, you know what it is. I know what it is from just the last few months of us interacting with each other. But the folks listening, they're like, He keeps saying Spark, but what the heck is that? So what does Spark Media do, and the Spark Collective, and then of course the cool thing that you just announced just earlier, well, just a month ago, was Spark Magazine. So yeah.
Yeah. So Spark was an answer to prayer. I had asked God, where does my gifting and my calling line up in this next season of my life? And he was like, podcast conference. And I'm like, a podcast conference? What? I've never even been to a podcast conference. At that point, I'd never been to one.
That blew my mind to learn that, by the way. I was like, what?
I'd been to writing and speaking conferences. And so I had an idea of what that would look like. But God really showed me that Christian podcasts are the largest category on iTunes, yet the least underserved with what's happening in the marketplace. And so I just stepped out and said, yes. God gave me the name Spark. He gave me the date. I got a venue. I just started calling my friends saying, hey, I'm going to start this conference. Would you be willing to speak? And from there, God just opened one door after another. And the first Spark happened just weeks before the pandemic. And the cool thing about that is all of these people came. We had standing room only in the hotel that we had rented. And it was just a love fest of podcasting. We had people from the industry that were there. All of these connections were made, and it was just amazing. And weeks later, the world shut down. And so all of these people who had been to Spark had made connections. I think probably 15 podcasts were launched out of that conference.
Wow.
And so people were able to have time in the pandemic to start. And then that's how the collective was born.
Nice. And the collective, is it primarily a Facebook group of folks who've come together who are like-minded, or is there a membership website that they go to? Because I remember when I went just this June 2021, I was amazed at how many folks already knew each other and they've been connected in a community. So yeah, how does the collective get together and synergize like I saw them do?
Yeah. So we took those first initial videos from the conference and put them into a video library. And so people have access to training. And then I interview people all the time in the industry talking about what's happening in the industry. And so we have this video library that they go to. We also do masterminds and group coaching and one-on-one consulting, all to help coach and train. But I think where we really shine and what differentiates us from what anybody else is doing in the marketplace is the strategic partnerships that I've developed with people like the NRB, where we hosted our conference within their conference. It was a really inception type moment where we had a conference within a conference. But I am all about building relationships and collaborations to help, because I know that as Christian communicators, it can be a very competitive marketplace. But as someone who loves the Lord and the gospel, I want to find ways that we can work together to advance the kingdom. And so I think that is how it's grown from the collective to then we partnered with Podfest to do a faith track for Global Media Summit. And we set a Guinness Book of World Records there for the largest online podcast conference. Then we hosted our own Spark Now Summit. Peter ran all of the tech. We did it partially live in our home and partially pre-recorded. And we met on Zoom, and it was a really amazing experience. So we were able to, and we did that election week, because I saw that people all of my friends who were podcasters, who were the ones who were the encouragers, they were getting discouraged with what was happening. And because the summer of 2020 and the fall with the election, it was just all really heavy. And I was like, no, y'all, we are still here. God has us on mission, and we need to be busy about what we're doing. So we did that. And then we started to plan and prepare for the Spark that you attended. And then during that time, one of our strategic partnerships was with Glory Stone, that we created a podcast network. And now we are, looking to advance the network. And then from there, we launched the magazine. So it's really been a series of like, okay, God, what's next? And then he opens a door and we walk through it, and we continue to, make partnership arrangements with other people who are doing some really fun, interesting things. And it's been a blast.
Now, what are some of the things you do to identify who is that strategic relationship? Because, I mean, whether somebody's in podcasting or they're in real estate development, or I'm trying to think of another entrepreneurship type of venture, but I just went blank there. But anyway, so strategic partnerships, strategic relationships, and contacts are a part of succeeding in anything that we do. How did you identify and discern if that was the right strategic partnership to have or not have?
Yeah. So one of the first things that sort of started me on this path was I formed a board. So Rob Kirkpatrick from Focus on the Family is on my board. There are some other prominent people who are on my board who advise me. And I think that there's wisdom in a multitude of counsel. But one of the things that I wanted Spark to be made known for is that biblical worldview. And just to have a really, I want to be a place for Christian podcasters to gather. I want to equip, train, and encourage and inspire them. So that's kind of like, I want to work with Bible believing people. I think that's kind of one of the main things. So one of our partnerships, one of our other first initial partnerships was with pray.com. Mm-hmm. And so they're a prayer app, a #1 prayer app, and those types of relationships.
Well, I want to circle back kind of to the beginning of the first part of the question. Sorry, we just lost our video.
Oh, I'm still here.
Okay. Changed it. I don't know what.
There was a light little stutter. I saw it, and then.
Okay, well, it's still working. What I think, when you asked about how did Misty make those decisions, one of the things she's amazing at is being a connector. Mm-hmm. She has a lot of relationships. She's connected to a lot of people. But the way she interacts, God has just kept delivering more and more people to her. That here's another relationship, and here's another, and is naively unaware of how well known she is, which I love, because it's not an ego thing at all. It's just she has such a heart for the Lord and just wants to work to further the kingdom. And that's her driving passion. It's not money. It's not time. It's not some kind of recognition or notoriety. She actually doesn't like that part. And I think he's rewarded that in delivering. And there's things we've turned down and said, that's not for us. Like that sounds great, but that's not going to work for us right now. But she's done a tremendous job of saying, how can we benefit each other? It's always about the mutual benefit. It's not, well, what are you going to do for Spark? How is that going to make us? No. It's always, how can we help each other? Or how can I help my people in my community? Because it is, the collective is an online community. It's a subscription base where you have all the training, all the videos. And then she has consulting, which is Consulting with Misty, that it gives you one-on-one deep interactive time to kind of further what you're doing with your podcast, or multiple topics can be covered. And that drive and that passion for her people and the people in the community always shows because of the relationships that she's developed and the things she just brings them right away. So if we're in the community, you're getting a force multiplier in her ability to connect with other businesses and people and bring it to the community and say, hey guys, here you go. How'd you like to make virtually unlimited money by producing a 3-minute video? Well, you get paid X number of dollars per video all the time. Just make the video. That's a revenue stream right away. And for most people who are podcasting, this is not a money-making business. Most of them are not making any money at all.
Yeah.
They're usually burning money, right? They're paying for their hosting. They're paying for their site. They're paying for their equipment. Very few people are making money. And so always striving to help ease that burden, further the message in the kingdom, but always uplift her people. So it's a pretty, it's a pretty amazing thing she has woven together that the Lord has really kind of delivered for her, but she won't say these things and she won't bring it forward. So I have to say it and bring it forward. So
Thank you.
That's why I had both of you on here.
You'd have just been like, you wouldn't have heard anything. So,
oh man. And I've seen that in action when I was at Spark Conference, just June 2021, just her connecting folks. And it was like just a nonstop celebration for those 3 days. And then I had the honor of meeting up with her and Ian at Podcast Movement, and then we went to the mixer that first evening, Tuesday evening, which was basically her party. And so it was like every interaction I've had with Spark Media has been a celebration, a let's get together, let's connect, and not so much about look at me, look at me, look at me. It's like, look at what we're doing together. Look at so-and-so's success. The awards ceremony at the end of Spark Conference, that was everybody celebrating each other, because you had to be nominated by somebody, and then you had to be voted on by the community and the folks beyond that community. So everybody who had won some kind of recognition, it was truly that community, that Spark collective and Spark community doing that. And I can see that in the few times I've interacted with you both, that you are creating that environment, that safe space for folks to synergize and bounce ideas off each other, get excited for each other. And the collaboration I've seen, we mentioned the Watsons earlier, the two of them, Nick Ruffin, oh man, the other two folks I just met and I can't remember the names right now, but even at Spark Conference, the 5 or 6 of them went off, had dinner together, and then in a living room recorded a group panel that became episodes on each other's shows. I'm like, man, that's so cool. And so I was getting fired up. And I think in any other situation, folks would be like, whoa, why'd they leave me out? I just met them. I thought they were cool. And it was like, that's not Spark. They were all like, this is cool. Yeah, way to go. That is awesome. You just published a book. That's awesome. Hey, do you know so-and-so? She's a publisher. And, you just see that going on. And so if you hadn't heard that, I mean, you probably have, but if you hadn't heard it today, this is me telling you,
that flows from Misty. That really does. I mean, the saying, right? The company culture comes from the leader, right? And so they drive that culture. So think of this representatively as a company, right? And it is a open Facebook community, a private Facebook community. It is a subscription website, is a network, it is a magazine, all of those things, like that culture and how that feel, the way the conference feels, right? That was the one thing we heard time and time again, was like, this is the best concert I've been to. I've been to 20 conferences. I've never felt like, I felt the Holy Spirit here. I felt the love and the kindness and tenderness for each other, right? Well, that only flows from one thing, right? That flows from her. And so that culture being pushed out it shows that that's the Lord representing himself as that connector, that compassionate leader, right, is flowing out of her through that. And I see that because I see how hard she works behind the scenes to get all these people enabled and empowered and connected, right? And it's a lot of work. She looked at me a few times and goes, I got myself a job. Why did I do this? Like, how did I get myself a job? Like I could have just been playing tennis, and doing whatever, but
eating lunch with my friends.
Yeah,
hanging out.
It's so not you, right? So you can't not do that. So yeah,
nice.
Now and I want to say one thing real quick. I didn't mean to interrupt you. Sorry, but I really loved at the award ceremony that you just showed up guerrilla style and started a podcast and interviewing people in the room. So I wish we had some, we have some video of it somewhere, I think, but you got to put that out. I loved seeing you just set up at the table right there and just started right when the awards were over, like you got set up. I thought, how appropriate is it that you're just going to, interview people on a podcast at a podcast conference at the award ceremony for podcasting. I thought that was great. I love that you did
that. I got the idea from Jared Easley, who founded Podcast Movement. He doesn't do it at his own conference, but he goes off to like FinCon and a couple other places and just interviews them right there on the spot. And I'm like, that's a brilliant idea. I want to do that someday. Or he'd, meet up with some friends in another city and they would just record in a coffee shop. And I'm like, that sounds cool. Like, they're probably not even eating food or drinking coffee. They're probably just clinking plates and cups together every so often. But it sounded, and so I thought that'd be great. So I did that at another conference, and it worked out really well. And coming right off of that awards ceremony was perfect because everybody was hyped up, and I was able to interview one person and tell her what the show was about. And then she, I think it was Michelle Watson actually, turns around and brings Paul Hastings up to the mic. And then Paul turns around and gets Gloria Guadron up to the mic. And then somebody grabbed, who was it that got the people's favorite? She has the podcast about pornography. Paula?
Rosie McKinney.
Rosie McKinney.
Fight for Love. Yeah, Fight for Love.
So somebody grabs her because we were talking about like what was the most downloaded episode for Beyond the Rut. And I was like, it was the one where we had this guy talk about pornography and sexual impurity among men. And they're like, oh, you need to get Rosie on here. And then somebody dragged her up there and got her on the mic. And so it was like 4 or 5 people back to back to back. Like whoever was on the mic went ahead and grabbed somebody else to get on the mic who got somebody else to get on the mic. And I thought, this is brilliant. I should have done this the whole time and like just do full on episodes. So that might be my strategy in 2022. Just go to 2 or 3 conferences. It's like Spark and just set up guerrilla style. And right there, that's like 5 or 6 weeks worth or 10 weeks. Cause everybody there, specifically Spark conference, it has some sort of story of coming out of a rut. They either hit rock bottom or they got stuck in life and then had it on their heart to get out of that rut. And now that story, that testimony is what's bringing other people out of the rut. And I'm like, that's exactly what this show's all about is, how did your story, what was your story of getting out of a rut? How do you help people get out of the rut? What are some of those success stories? What are some of those practical advice pieces that you can give folks who are listening in? And a Christian podcast conference has just a wealth of stories like that. And I would have been dumb not to bring the microphone.
Well, and the funny thing is, Jerry, is that that's exactly how I started my podcast. Was I went to a conference and I recorded in my hotel room in the pre-conference because I had all of these women who were there who had all of these stories. And so I took my mic, I set it up in the hotel room. I still have those episodes up. They're really rough in comparison to where I'm at now in my podcasting journey. But it was like Chris Kermitza says, start ugly. It was ugly when I started. It was, but it was all of these people who had these messages. And so I think conferences are a great place to get started. And similar, people have stories that they want to share. And mine were about the struggles. I'd interviewed all these people and their struggles, but we talked about how God saw them through, just like you, beyond the rut.
Yeah. Oh man. Yeah, exactly. I mean, just got to get out there, get those stories, share them with other people. So what's next on the horizon for Spark?
Yeah, so we are, working on the next issue of the magazine. So we're doing a quarterly issue of the magazine, and the intent of that is really to continue to amplify the voice of Christian podcasters. It's been really well received, and so we're really excited about that. We want it to be a publication that it has tips and tells the story of the podcaster, but also has encouragement in there. So we're working on the next issue. We loved our partnership this year with the NRB. That worked out really well. So we're working out what Spark will look like next year at the NRB because we want to partner with them again, probably just in a pre-conference type capacity or maybe a one-day, half-day event so that we can take advantage of everything happening at the NRB. One of the things that we did there was the live podcasting on the NRB floor, and they want to expand that from 4 podcast booths to 2 or 3 times the size. So I want to be able to take advantage of that because I was running around like a crazy person, conference, interview, conference, this. I mean, I did 12 interviews in between radio, television, and podcast in between the events. So
yeah, I saw you scrambling almost the entire time. I was like, go, go, go. Peter, what do you see on the horizon for Spark?
The idea there's when we kind of started this, we came up with 7 offerings from Spark, right? And so we've rolled out 4 of those, I think. And so there's 3 more coming that are already planned. We're going to really for furtherance of the community and teaching. You'll be rolled for the remainder of the year and next year. But I think aligning with our partnerships is really sort of crucial for us, because we have a lot of them, but ones that are for Spark are going to really help. It's always it's a partnership in that sense that it's mutually beneficial for everyone. But how does that really focus to the core Spark Media? And that's the future for us, is making sure not dilute for this. And not that I'm saying that start having all these partnerships in your life. There's 50 things, maybe not, like say, no, that's not going to work, and let's stay focused. So I think those, kind of those two fronts for us are going to be crucial, because we want that message. It's all about the message, right? It's the message is the most important piece, and staying true to that, I think, is going to be what we're really going to focus on. At least that's what I'm doing. I don't know.
Yeah, no, I love it. I always tell people, use your story to give God glory. And I want to help people to spark that soul message that they have, because we all have things that we're passionate about, and we all have things that we can do to bring glory and honor to God. And so any way that I can encourage and inspire people to do that. And Spark has been definitely a way for me to do that. So
perfect. That's the perfect spot to close up our time as well. And Peter, Misty, I'm so glad that you were able to take some time on this long weekend to join us here on Beyond the Rut.
Thanks, Jerry. This has been fun.
Thank you so much, Jerry. Appreciate it.